Well, let me start with a question. Imagine that you are a fundraising executive at a nonprofit and you are working in the area of planned giving. So here's the question. What would be one strategy in the area of planned giving you would start today? Well, we're going to look at this question and others. My name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and this is Funding the Future Now podcast. It's designed for nonprofits, executive leaders, presidents, people in that whole area of nonprofit. And we want to today drill more specifically down into the area of planned giving. In order to do that, I'm delighted to have my guest here today, Chris McGowan. And Chris is a planned giving professional in a fractional role. He's been doing this for 30 years. So I would say, Chris, you have a lot of experience and look forward to just interacting with you, hearing some wisdom that you can share in an area that is so vital in the area of nonprofits. And I've heard the two best times to start a plan giving strategy is 20 years ago and today. And so for maybe some of our guests, it'll be, hey, I need to start something now, because we've certainly seen at our organization the fruits of planned giving. So welcome, Chris, and why don't you just take a few moments and introduce yourself to the audience?
Great. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. I love the idea of sharing plan giving. My mission for years has been to demystify this plan giving world that everybody seems to be afraid of. They're afraid of the technology and the scary and the technical world of it. But that is so rare that that comes up that it really is just it's a moot point for the vast majority of nonprofits and their donors. So Peak 9860 focuses on training nonprofits how to launch plan giving programs, grow plan giving programs. We do consulting, we do coaching, and then we do fractional work as well. For those who've decided that they just don't have the time and the bandwidth, we come in a part-time basis and work with their donors and their team to really implement a plan giving program on the ground representing their organization. So all around, if it's a plan giving question or need, we're there to set it aside and get it done for you.
I love it. And the fact that with smaller organizations, they could take advantage of your fractional work is a great advantage to have. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you, Chris. And here's the first one. What do you think is the biggest misconception nonprofit presidents have about planned giving that is really hindering their organization or keeping their organization from building what we would call a legacy program? What's that misconception?
The biggest misconception is that only big nonprofits can have a plan giving program. That it is what the Salvation Armies and the St. Jude's and the American
Okay.
Cancer Societies of the world do, and everybody else just has to take the crumbs that are left over. And that's just the farthest thing from the truth. The reality is every nonprofit, even if you've only been around for a short amount of time, can start to plant the seeds of plan giving and legacy giving with their donors, regardless of the size. The most common gift is one that everybody needs, right? A will. And
Yeah.
the reality is, while most Americans don't have a will, which is a sad statement, nonprofits have a role to play in helping educate their donors, inspiring them to take that action, and in return, encourage them to support that organization, that mission that they already love in their will and in their gift.
Yeah, I love that. And one time a consultant said to me, every time you're out visiting with a donor or a prospective donor, I suppose more we would say donor rather than prospective donor, always have a few questions that you ask everybody. Thank you for the giving that you've been making. And maybe you want to talk about a future gift that they would make. So you could wrap that in one question. Second question would be, do you know anybody else that you think would be interested in hearing more about our organization? And the third one is, say, John or Sally, have you ever considered putting the name of the organization in your will or in a plan giving strategy? So if you have those three questions, you can ask them at any time. And if you know these people, of course, you can have a pretty honest and open conversation with them. So I love the fact that you've broken it down. You don't need to be at that high level. You don't need to have an expert that's got 30 years of experience full-time on staff. You're shaking your head. I agree with you. It is, we look at it as a benefit to our organization. So true. But it is a value add benefit to that individual when they can start thinking more about how do they plan that legacy part of their lives. So great. Thank you for that. Well, Imagine this. You're a fundraising executive at a smaller nonprofit and, of course, limited resources. What would you say would be the one plan giving strategy that executive should start to?
Go for wills and go for wills exclusively. Everything else will come into focus. If you're able to focus a message to your donors about how you want them to remember them in your will, and you talk about that consistently and persistently, it's going to happen. There's absolutely no doubt at all. Evidence is huge, mountains of evidence about what consistent and persistent messaging about specific will wording results in planned giving. So if I'm talking to any nonprofit, and I talk about it all the time because, it's what I do, right? I focus on wills. In fact, even with the more complex donors who end up doing trusts or annuities or whatever else, always the conversation can always start with a will, because no matter what else they have, they need to have a will, and it's a natural conversation. You start talking about trusts, or you talk about life estate agreements, or whatever those are, people say, well, that's not for me, but everybody needs a will. And whenever you can fine tune the language that you want to suggest to your donors about how to leave a gift in your will, then you're way ahead of the curve for most people. Donors are always in control. They control what they're going to do. But 95% of the time, they're putting you in your will because they love you. They have already committed to you, right? They're putting you in the same document as their children, their grandchildren, their spouses, right? This is a significant honor. So it's not presumptuous to say this is how to include us in your will. It's the natural next step of a relationship that you're building with a donor. Now, to be clear, the majority of planned gifts, the majority of will gifts, aren't going to tell you it's done. They're not going to raise their hand. They're not going to say, hey, I did that. But the fact that you're sharing that information encourages them to do it, gives them the power to do it, and lets them know what is the best way to benefit your organization. If you leave the question, and your question is a great starter question, right? Have you ever considered leaving us in your will? And you leave it at that, especially in broad conversations, you really miss the opportunity to help them make the decision. If instead you said, when leaving XYZ organization or will, here's the exact wording to get that done, right? To your legal name, your tax ID, and how you want it to be. Is it to an endowment? Is it to your general, whatever that is? And that's what you consistently and persistently promote. Then when a donor wants to leave your will, but they don't want to do that, they're going to reach out and get the right wording, right? Because now they know that you can take a will gift. It's amazing to me how many very smart, very wealthy individuals I deal with who assume that because their favorite nonprofit never mentioned it means that they can't accept a gift through the will. And they don't want to embarrass their nonprofit friend that they love by saying, hey, can you do this? And they have to say no. So they just don't do it. They include their alma mater, because I promise you their alma mater is talking about it, right?
Yeah,
They include their church or their synagogue, but they don't include the local mission or the food bank or whatever that is that they love, their humane society, because no one brought it up. So they assumed my alma mater brought it up, they can do it. They didn't bring it up, they must not be able to do it. And so by persistently and consistently spreading the news of what you want, it lets them know you can, you're open to it, and here's the way to do it. You don't have to go looking around. Here it is. Give this to your attorney. It's very simple. It makes their life easier, so they don't have to think about it. They don't have to ponder. They don't have to wonder. Like, the confused mind says no, right? That's sales 101 kind of thing. And the same is true in planned giving as major giving, right? You give them that option. And if they don't want that, they'll tell you, right? Because they love you, right? You're not going to upset them. So give them the precise, consistent language and let them run with it.
So good. The takeaway for me is that anytime I'm in communication, anytime on my website, there should be language that always is in front of people. I shouldn't miss an opportunity when I'm communicating, written, print, website, to be talking about that. What about this? What about if somebody says to you, well, doesn't everybody have a will? Do you have any, I know this may be putting you on the spot, any statistics of how many people don't have a will?
7 out of 10 Americans do not have an up-to-date will.
Okay.
About 50% of Americans have a will, but 7 out of 10 don't have an up-to-date will. So they may have created a will when their child was born, but now their child's 30, right? A lot's happened since then. And
For sure.
so 7 out of 10 don't have a will. And one of the mistakes nonprofits make when they start to pare down their list of who they want to talk to, which is mistake number one, you talk to everybody, don't pare down your list.
Right.
Uh, they start to look at older Americans or older donors. Well,
Mhm.
the average person who includes a nonprofit in the will does it at about age 45 for the first time. Now, it may
Okay.
evolve over the years, right? It may change either percentage or amount or how they designate it may change over the years as the will and the document changes. So they're doing it at a younger age than what most nonprofits think about. So rather than focusing on this one group and communicating with them, I always encourage you put it out there for everybody because you never know who's going to be interested and there's no reason not to, right? So don't create something new for plan giving. Don't do that. Include it in what you're already doing, right? Include it if you're doing direct mail and make sure there's a checkbox on your remit that says, I have included blah, blah, blah in my will, right? Or,
Yeah.
in the next quarter, it was, I would like to learn more about how to include blah, blah, blah in my will, right? Change that up.
Sure.
You're sending out e-newsletters, put a blurb in there. You're doing a Facebook post, talk about how a gift through a will can endow that program that you're talking about, right? So
Sure.
include it as your general conversation to everybody rather than to just a select group.
Love that. So good. Well, what if a nonprofit president would say, okay, I've got the annual fund. That takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot to get things out, written conversations. And then now you're talking to me about planned giving, but it seems to be a competition in my mind between the two. How would you address that to a nonprofit president?
That is a conversation I have a lot of time, primarily on the amount of time, right? How do I delegate time to this versus that? And my answer has always been stop putting plan giving in a bucket. Plan giving is part of every bucket, same as major gift solicitation is a part of every bucket. It isn't isolated. It's part of what you do and how you do it. So talk about it as part of the holistic conversation. But to answer your specific question about the competition between two, that is a concern that people have. But study after study has shown that not only does planned giving not negatively impact outright giving, it actually improves it.
Okay.
Once a donor has made a planned gift, they have near 100% commitment to that organization for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
So they're
That's
not
right.
going to drop off. They're not going to lapse. They're going to increase their giving. Trigger happens once they've included in your will that they very much want you to be there and thriving whenever they can no longer support you. And so you see this change happen in their giving, that they're going to increase consistency. They're going to increase amounts as they go through it. At the very least, they're going to remain consistent with what they have done at nearly 100% versus, what is it, about 60 or 60% for multi-year donors and 20% for new donors, right? So it's a significant change and it is a dramatic emotional connection they have. And so
Mhm.
it isn't a competition. It actually complements one another. The trend that we're seeing now are what they call blended gifts. So going into the conversation with both and ask for a major gift and a planned gift on the back end of it, normally to endow what it is they're talking about.
Sure.
I'm not opposed to that. I just think they're two very different emotional spots for a donor, and it's very difficult for a donor to make that shift. And so I tend to encourage professionals to break that up. One, it gives you another reason to go talk to your donor, right? Which is
Sure.
great. And two, it allows the donor to focus on the one thing you need at that moment, right? That whichever part of the equation it is. I'm not a big fan of blended gifts, but if you're comfortable with it and that's where the donor is and you're only going to get one shot, take it, right? So it isn't there isn't a hard and fast rule, but they don't compete. They actually complement one another and they actually support one another. Plain giving can even be an effective tool for lapsed donors. You have donors who are no longer giving. You can talk to them separately and using education about not how to support you through the will exclusively, but the importance of estate planning, right? So you create the track to educate them and talk to them, and you're giving them value. Part of that, of course, is to support you. And as you educate them about this giving, the reciprocity will kick in again, and you'll see
Mm.
lapsed donors reactivating, or they've reached a point where they don't think they can give anymore, right? So I call it the shopping cart mentality. The lady with $6 million at 90 years old is afraid she's going to run out of money. So she stops giving annual gifts. Well, you're never going to get over that, right? She's made her mind up that she has to save her money but you can talk to her about how she can make a gift through her will. So even in a lapsed capacity, you can relapse and you can engage. So it's not just active donors. There's also a tool and a way to use plan giving for lapsed donor reactivation and engagement.
That is a very creative thought. I have not thought of that before. It's the idea, I think, I want to educate people. I want to help people. I want to add value to people. And so when someone sees that and senses it genuinely from you, I think that creates a greater bond between you and other people, that whole issue of trust. Well, I'd love for you to share a success story from your fractional work where maybe a nonprofit unlocked a legacy gift that they just never thought was possible, and maybe talk a little bit about that. What made the difference? What maybe did it accomplish? Just love to hear a story from you, Chris.
So I've got a few. It's always hard to pick the one, right? So, but the one I
Yeah.
love is the nonprofit who brought us in not to be factional, right? But to help their staff understand how to build the program and to move conversations. And really and truly, what we're doing is helping the staff become comfortable with this
For sure.
conversation, because it's as uncomfortable for some staff members as it is for the donors, right? So how do
Yeah.
you get it? So we looked at this idea of how to or how to divide the list up. And we always teach a bifurcated approach, right? So you have those individuals you're going to go proactively reach out to, board members, longtime donors, wherever they are. And then you're going to have this shotgun approach of talking to everybody. And they did not want to do the shotgun approach. They wanted to keep it isolated and really focus it. And I finally talked them into this broad approach. And about 3 months into this broad approach, when they were just about ready to tell me that they were right and I need to shut up, one of their $10 a month donors raised their hand and said, "I'd love to talk to you about the will." And so we
Okay.
did some prep work about how to do that, and it ended up being about a $3 million gift out of a $10 a month
Oh,
donor. Now
wow.
they over the last 2 years, they have increased, but not significantly. It's like, I think last I heard was $25 a month, but it's a
Okay.
significant gift through their will. So they're comfortable with this small monthly gift because that's, for whatever reason, it's where they are in their life for where they are. But there's a significant gift coming down the road. Both, it's a split, part will and part IRA beneficiary. But it's a significant gift that never would have come about had they not had that shotgun approach and they just focused on the $10,000 donor or the $1,000 donor
Okay.
rather than that $10 a month donor.
Yeah. I've often been told that when you look at donors that give smaller amounts, don't overlook them, but look at regularity of the giving and the amount. So that lady giving $10 a month or $25 a month, we tend to bypass those because they're not the $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 gifts. But that regularity shows they really love you as an organization. So that was quite an amazing story. Well, I've got a couple short questions at the end that have to do more with just you as a person. So here's the first question. What is maybe the best piece or a great piece of professional advice you've ever received?
Don't fear the phone. Pick up the phone, stupid. And it has served me well for a very, very long time. It's, in a world of emails, texts, and direct messages, the phone is still a very, very powerful tool. And learning how to craft a really good voicemail message, because that's what you're going to get a lot of the time, and what you're going to say in that and how you're going to encourage them to call you back. But don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call people to say thank you and to ask for the next gift or to ask for the appointment or whatever the next step is in your process. Don't fear the phone.
Yeah, it's interesting how our cell phones can weigh 25 pounds at some times.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
can't,
Yeah.
can't pick them up. It's too heavy. Okay, that's good. Second question. What's a daily habit you cannot live without?
So many great habits and so many bad habits, but my daily habit that I can't live without is starting my day in with the Lord. So time in his word and in prayer is where I have to start, even before my morning coffee, because without starting there, the rest of my day just does not work. If I try to have something else and then come back to it, it never gets done, and that day never works out. So if I don't start in my foundation, in my roots, it never goes the way I want it to. And so that's where I start every day.
Love it. Well, I want you to imagine that you could go back to your 20-year-old self and give that young, aspiring young man some advice. What would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Eat better, but setting aside from that, because I wouldn't listen to me. I'm sure of that. What I would say is don't be afraid to make change. Over my career, I stayed places I shouldn't have stayed out of comfort rather than out of
Okay.
enjoyment. And where if I would have changed earlier, I might have met my wife earlier. So much could have been different if I wouldn't have had the fear of change and the false security of consistency and familiarity.
So good. The next question, going a little deeper here. I want you to think of a failure. Not doesn't need to be epic, but instead of talking about that, I want you to talk about how that actually set you up for success in your life.
Yeah, like most people, I tell people I fail more by 9 a.m. than most people do all day long. So I've never been afraid of failure. And so one of the things that I did early on in my life was I neglected education. I went to college and I studied. Well, I went to college, but I
Yeah.
went to college for the degree. I didn't go to college to learn. Felt that I was able to get by on fast talk and a smooth presentation.
Mm.
And rather than focus on really understanding what it is I was doing and why I was doing it. And what that did was it showed me very, very quickly that it doesn't matter how smooth I am, the fact that I didn't really have a commitment and an emotional connection, what I was talking about, shined through to those who
Oh,
did have that emotional connection. And it
yeah.
showed me very quickly that, especially when fundraising, donors have as much emotional connection, perhaps even more emotional connection than we do as professionals in the field. And
Uh-huh.
when that didn't align with them, they could see very clearly that I was talking the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk. And so I had
Sure.
to find that passion inside the mission to allow me that it was a genuine response to them and to the organization so that I could build my career, but also build the organization and what I wanted to do. And so it took frankly, falling on my face. And despite presenting a really good presentation, it was hollow because there wasn't anything behind.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. A last question. Where's your favorite place on earth to disconnect and recharge?
So since you sent me this question ahead of time, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, I'm gonna have to give you three, right?
Okay.
Short term, like every day, I take my
Yep.
dog for a walk, and that is we're in a loop where there is absolutely nobody. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody in the parking lot, but almost nobody. It's just me and my dog, and we're out, right? It's
Yeah.
amazing. Longer term, I love to go on cruises. We have one next month. I absolutely love it because internet's outrageously expensive on a cruise ship, and it allows me to completely disconnect. And me and my wife have our time, and it's a great experience.
Mm.
And it really strengthens our relationship. It strengthens everything about me. I come out rejuvenated. And then long term, I love the Black Hills of South Dakota. I've never
Okay.
felt as close to God as I do on those hilltops where I feel like I can just reach up and touch the heavens. And so
Mm.
I would live in Black Hills of South Dakota, but I would live a single man. And I love my wife too much. So I'm not going to do that. But I get back there every few years to reconnect with something that is just so powerful. It is truly God's majesty and creation at my
Mm.
fingertips.
I love that. We love the Black Hills too. Well, Chris, what a delight. You have opened our eyes to a lot of very, very important information that's sometimes not talked very much at in a nonprofit. We think of the immediate gift, getting those dollars in now, and we don't really think of the long term. And I've heard it said before that if somebody's making a $25 gift per month and you take it over 10, 15 years, yeah, that's a lot of money. But the average estate gift that comes into a nonprofit, I guess I've seen ranges of it. Maybe you can help me on here. Maybe 30, 40, or $50,000 comes in with an estate gift. So that's 10 times the amount that perhaps somebody has given over their life. So just so valuable to hear that. Well, thank you again. And just love to give you an opportunity, Chris, just to share with our audience a little bit about how they can connect with you. I know you've got really a valuable area of service you provide. So take some time to share about that.
Great. So our company is called Peak 9860, and it is PEAK, and then the numbers 9860. So peak9860.com. On that website, there's a resources tab, and there's some great training that's free of charge, and a calculator on there to help you kind of figure out from your current donor base what might be in your donor file already from plan gift expectancies. So give you some eye-opening numbers to see based on very large sample of nonprofits of all kinds of different sizes. So it's a really good tool I encourage people to do. And then training there as well. I'm active on LinkedIn, Christopher McGown. So and my last name is McGown, which is not the traditional spelling in the United States. And
Okay.
so there aren't that many of us on LinkedIn in the US, so reach out. I'll be happy to connect with you. I tell people all the time, my passion is helping you understand plan giving. And if that means you don't hire me, all you do is use me, use me. Reach out, let's connect, schedule some time, talk about how we can help your nonprofit get this moving and going forward.
Super. Love it. Well, I want to thank my audience for joining us today, joining Chris and myself. This is Funding Your Future Now podcast. My name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and we put these podcasts out regularly. So just love for you to subscribe and join us in the future. So thanks again. Have a blessed day. Bye now.